Hey guys, it's East Village and welcome to my tutorial series where we'll be making a bot for Rocket League. This bot will be made in Java and we'll use the RLBot framework. The RLBot framework uses an API provided by Psyonix, so don't worry about being banned or something. Now if you don't know what RLBot is, I will recommend that you check out these videos here on rlbot.org and join our Discord server, because this is where the community lives and this is where you'll be able to find help. As for IDE, I will recommend that you use IntelliJ by JetBrains. It's a really good editor and IDE for Java, and it's free, so that's a plus. And also a lot of members in the community uses this one, so they'll be able to help you easily if you use it. One other thing I'm going to mention is I'll expect that you know some Java. I won't be explaining what classes is or functions or variables and all that kind of stuff. If you don't know that, you should see another tutorial first. So to get started, you can find our example bot by pressing this card here, or you can go to the URL up here. It's this is just an example of a very simple bot that just follows the ball, and we'll use this as a template to make our own bot. If you know Git, you probably know how to do this, but in case you don't, just follow my instructions here. You can download it by downloading this zip and save. Find a good place to store it. I have my bots in here. Extract it, and you should now have the folder called RLBot Java Example Master. I recommend that you right away find a name for your bot. My bot will be named Goblin. Let's jump into the folder here. Now if you open IntelliJ, open the project here, guide to wherever your bot is located. There we go. And Goblin, okay. And you can just press the folder here, select it. It will now ask if you should import it as a Gradle project, and you just do that. I usually take this one here, press OK, and it will now load up the project. Okay, so let me start out by just explaining how it all works. So the RLBot framework will try to start this bot as a Python bot, and in case of Java, it'll open a port for us to speak through, and then the Python part will connect to the Java part. So we don't have to think about Python at all. We can just go into our Java here and find the Java example. This is where we'll find our main. If something here doesn't look exactly like mine, it's because the example has been updated, which happens from time to time. The important part is that when I start deleting things, don't worry about those, because we didn't need them anyway. It's whatever I leave that will be important. So maybe we should actually just try and run it as a start. So to run it, we have to start this Python script, and you can see that it installs a lot of packages, among others the RLBot framework, and it will then start up Steam and Rocket League. And in the meantime, we can just go in here and run the main function here, so our bot actually works. Oh, there we have Rocket League, and you can see it starts up right into the match. Hopefully our bots will move. They did not. Let's check if... Okay, that's because IntelliJ wasn't done compiling. It should be done now, and you can see if the bots move. So they missed the kickoff, but that's okay. And as you can see, they are very simple. They will just try to go towards the ball, always full throttling. So yeah, this is what we call an ADBA, an always towards ball agent. Not super exciting right now. So let's stop this match again. You can stop the framework here by pressing Q and just close it. You can leave Rocket League open once RLBot has opened it once. Okay, so let's start looking at what actually happens here. So only this part here is actually the bot. Everything else here is a GUI that opened in the background to let you know which bots are running as a Java bot. Here we can see that it creates a bot manager, then it reads a port from a file and starts listening on that port. Then we create a Python interface, and this is the one that creates our bots, and it will start our bot in this thread. So if we just go into the sample Python interface, we can see here that it has an init bot function, and here it creates a sample bot. So let's look into what a sample bot is. This is actually a bot. This will be a bot. It has two functions here. Both of them are called process input right now, but this is the interesting one of them. We get a game tick package which contains all the information from the game that we are allowed to use. Or actually there's more than this, but this is all the interesting stuff. It contains the cars and their position, velocities, the ball and that position and velocity, also boost pads which are actives and so on. So all the good stuff is in here. First thing that happens here is we do some checks to see if everything is loaded correctly. If not, we'll just return nothing. Or an empty controller, I should say. So a controller that does nothing. Basically what we return is those buttons you would press if you had a controller. If you press the jump button, you set the jump variable to true. If you wanted to go forward, you set throttle to +1, and so on. This boost manager will load in the boost pads and update them. And then there's the data packet, where we'll make our own wrapper for the gametick packet and store everything that we care about. And that'll be interesting later. We'll discuss why we do that. And then we call our other process input function with our new data packet. Here you can see the behavior I was describing before, just always driving towards the ball. So we find the ball position, our own position, and we figure out how we steer towards it. So yeah, there will be a lot of linear algebra, but that's the way it is. It won't be too complicated here in the start, so don't worry. And this bot will also send in some quick chats and draw some debug lines. That was all the text you saw in the game before. Then returns a control output, just like the other function. Now there's a lot of other stuff here in the project as well, and that's because the Java example has a lot of good extra stuff. As I said, something about boost management. There's the data package both in and out. There's some prediction helper stuff. We'll delete that. Add some vectors, but we'll write our own vectors in a second, in the next video I believe. So yeah, we're going to change a lot of this. For now we'll just start renaming everything. First off, let's rename this one to something like Goblin main, and rename here is just Shift F6 I believe. And IntelliJ is super smart about renaming and refactoring the project, so it'll figure out where to rename everything, and we can do the same here. Let's call this one for Goblin, and it'll tell us that this name can also be found in some comments and in some code elsewhere, and yes, let's refactor that as well. The sample Python interface, let's call that the Goblin Python interface. Now, because we renamed the main function, we also have to go into this file called build.gradle and rename this one to Goblin main. And I just noticed here the package is still RLBot example, so let's rename the package to Goblin. This one will probably change things everywhere. That's okay. Now to actually rename the bot in-game, we have to go to the Java example config file. Let's just start by renaming the file itself. Goblin config, and this one can also just be goblin.py, and let's rename this one to looks instead of appearance. In here in the config, this is where all the interesting stuff is. So here we point the framework to our appearance file, how we're going to look, so you can actually make your bot look like anything you want, basically. I'll show you how to do that later in this video, but it should point to this looks file we just made, and the Python file is the Python file here next to it. So again, goblin, and name, this is the actual name in game. So let's call our bot for goblin in game. This one I'll just talk about in a second. First I want you to look at all these extra details in here. Here you can put in all the extra information about the bots. This one was made by East Village. Description, I'll come up with that later. I don't have a Git repository for it yet, so I'll just fill in that later, but it's a Java language. Now this part here is just to auto start the bot. So it then allows the framework to just start up your bot whenever a match with your bot is started, and you don't have to go in here and press the start button. The path you're going to write here is the name of your project. You can see it up here. So mine is goblin. So the first one is going to be goblin, then it's going to be bin, and then the last part here is also going to be goblin.bat. Okay? Now there's also some readme where you can go in and change things. So this is the goblin tutorial bot tutorial. Oh, this is going well. Tutorial bot. Yeah, let's go. A tutorial bot implemented in Java. Perfect. Okay, now to run our bot, we also have to go into the RLBot config. This file decides which match is started by our run.py here. So you can see it still refers to the old Java example. Now it should refer to goblin. Let's replace all of these. You can read all of these descriptions here and see what everything in this file does. Another thing I just want to put, now that we are here, I'm going to set that match length is unlimited, because that makes it a lot easier to develop our bot. We don't have to restart the match all the time. So let's also just put a bot against a psionics bot. So we can change this one to say psionics, and then change the skill of the psionics bot to 0, so it's basically a rookie bot. And that'll make the matches a bit more interesting, and we don't end up do the rule 1 with ourselves all the time. That will happen a lot in the start, but hopefully this should prevent it so it doesn't happen. I believe there's, oh wait, no, there's one more place we need to rename, and that's in the goblin main. It will say here in the GUI that this is the thing controlling the Java bot. Let's say this is the thing controlling the goblins. Let's say it. Keep me open. Okay, let's try and run it and see if everything works. If we renamed everything correctly. And we see that it is indeed running again, so we should be able to start a match. There we go. Our bot is now named Goblin. And While the opponent is called Goblin, it is actually a psionics bot. As you can see, it doesn't render a line to the ball like the blue one here does. It also behaves very differently. So lastly, I just want to show off our wikis. The wikis are a really great place to find a lot of resources and information about the game and the framework. Here in the Java bot example, we can actually find a link here. It's also in the top here. And here you have a few things that are specific to Java, but you can also go into the central wiki where you can find everything, basically. Some good things to know here are the field coordinates and other values. Here you can see the dimensions of the field and the goal height, the ceiling. You can see the boost pads, some details about those and the placements, all the locations here, some spawn locations and other good stuff. Oh, and another one that I almost forgot is the input and output data. If we just look at the Python one here, you can see an example GameTech package, which is actually really useful. You can see exactly what the cars, what variables you can find in here, what you have for the ball, what you have for just the game in general, like timers and so on. You can also see the controller state, like the controller that we sent back, all the possible values here. And then there's something called the field info that contains all the static information, things that don't change, like the boost pads locations, and if they're full or not. Those things never change, so they are saved in something different called field info. Luckily in Java we have what the IntelliJ ID can autocomplete for us, which will make it a lot easier. But it's still nice to have this overview from time to time. One thing you might also be interested in is the bot customization. So if you look at your looks file, config file, it will look something like this, just like shown here in the example. And those are all the IDs of the items. You can find the IDs in the link here, and you can find the colors down here. Painted items are currently not supported as of recording this video, but that might change. They might come back. You can also find tutorials on the rendering and how to use the quick chat, and then there's some great stuff about the physics of Rocket League here. This is a bit advanced, so we won't look into it. And yeah, you can find a lot of good stuff here. If there's something you can't find, ask in the Discord. There's a lot of nice people there, and they'll definitely help you. So that's it. Next time we will look at vectors and start cleaning up the project. See ya.